Sorry, my internet is chugging along. Just 1 second here. All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Kansas City Oasis. My name is Nikki Actipis, and I will be your MC for today. We are so excited you're here. If this is your first time, welcome, welcome. If this is your 50th time, welcome back. Today we have a pretty awesome lineup. We have Ezgi going to play us some music today. We have our own Sarah Miller on the community moment, and we have Kim Scipes on our featured speaker. So if you've never been here before, you may or may not know we are Kansas City's premier community to other faith-based communities, and we are here every Sunday from 11 to 12:30, hanging out, listening to some good talks, listening to some good music. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our musician today. So Ezgi, if you would like to open us up for this, and I will mute myself.
Okay, thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you guys today. And I will start with a prelude from Bach Cello Suite. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
All right, yeah. So if you would like to tell us a little bit about yourself, I know folks are are clamoring to hear more, first off, but I think I would like to know more about you. So if you can tell us a little bit more about you before you play us another song, that would be amazing.
Sure. So I am originally from Turkey, and I moved here in the States 2009 to actually pursue my degree. Right, I came here for my cello, actually, doing my master's degree, and then I did my doctorate. And I moved to Kansas City, um, like end of 2013, I'll say, yeah, for to do my doctorate. And then since then, I loved here, and I decided to stay here. So I have been teaching. So I'm the cello instructor at Missouri Western State, and also I'm teaching at Harmony Project. That's a nonprofit organization for underserved children. And I am a member of Ensemble Iberica. I don't know if you heard that group. So we do like live world music, and I started with them doing some Turkish music. And I also do my personal projects, you know, recordings, and I collaborate with lots of musicians in Kansas City area and do some theater productions and album recordings. And I also play with Calvin Arsenia, the harpist. I don't know if you guys know. Yeah, so we do lots of performances together. And I also opened a music academy called Sound Wave Academy for kids that want to go more serious about music. So we prepare them, focusing on chamber music and ear training. Yeah, so good to be here.
Yeah, and before you play, it's also been echoed in the chat, but I was gonna say maybe JJ can get you and Kelvin together one day for
Yeah,
Oasis,
that's great.
because that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and let you play another one, because everybody's itching to hear more.
Okay, so I will play the Alamand, which is the second movement of the Bach Cello Suite number 1. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
If you can see, you're getting the silent clap, which sounds like a bad thing, but it is definitely a good thing. Um, and I have a question in the chat for you. Somebody's asking what the name of your first piece was because they have a small child who plays cello and they
I
want to
will
talk.
write it down on the chat.
That
It's
is perfect.
it's a Bach suite number 1. So Bach wrote 6 different suites for cello, and this is the number 1 and the first movement prelude. I will also write it on the chat so you can have it.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
I look forward to hearing you in a little bit, and I think everybody else is feeling the same way.
Thanks.
So, to follow up that amazing music, I would like to take this opportunity to make some announcements before we get to our community moment for the day. So, if you have a birthday, anniversary, celebration of life that you would like to share with your folks at Kansas City Oasis, please get a hold of me or another board member or somebody else in leadership. Let them know. And I'm getting some folks in the chat saying that they have been vaccinated. Yes, that is a announceable news right there. But today, besides just about being vaccinated, I have a whole bunch of birthdays and some other stuff to say. So, as far as birthdays go, I believe today is James Skinner and Melanie Phillips' birthday. So, if you have them on Facebook, say happy birthday. Or if you live next door to them, throw like rocks at their window to say happy birthday. I don't know, however you want to say happy birthday. And then later this week, we have Jason Radford and David Black having birthdays. So happy birthday, guys. And as that's our birthdays, and then we had some anniversaries this week. So JC. See, I'm making up your ship name already. Jason and Amy had their anniversary this week, and so did Barb Williams and Daryl Ray had their anniversary this past week. So give a shout out to those folks for making it through the years together, and many more to them together. And on a little bit of a more somber note, Angela McClure lost her father last week. So if you know her, if she's a friend of yours, reach out, give your condolences, and ask maybe how you can help celebrate his life. So without further ado, I am going to switch it over to our community moment. And I don't think I got words for Sarah, but I'm trying to think of 3 good words for Sarah. A little bit cranky, but also a good person. That's like more than 3 words, but that's your introduction, Sarah. So, Sarah, I'm going to switch it over to you if that's okay.
And technologically challenged.
Well, how can we help you out? Because I know you had pictures to share.
Okay, so I'm going to try this and see what happens. But no, it's just going to. I think it's just going to show share my, I don't know how I shared those pictures the first time, but it's only going to share a copy of my desktop, it looks like, and that's not helpful.
No, if you share your desktop, you should be able to open any window and share that window.
Okay. So what are you guys seeing? My desktop?
Your desktop, and then click on a picture.
Okay, can you see that?
Yay! Yes.
Oh, and it has an arrow this time. I don't know what I did different, but something. Okay, so perfect. All right. So now this is going to take me 20 minutes to get through this instead. Sorry, just kidding. All right, so I'm going to try to keep this as brief as I can without giving you too much of a history lesson, which is hard for me not to do. But so this is my grandfather, and he was drafted into the war in 1942 to fight in World War II. He was initially he went to Orient, Africa, And from there, he was plucked out of his regiment and he was placed in the 36th Texas Infantry Division, who were already fighting in Italy. Now, at that time, Italian support for Mussolini was wavering, so they were having a lot of internal strife. And General Clark, who was the general over there at the time, he had made the decision that it was imperative to be the first ones to get to Rome before Hitler. So he decided the best way to do this was to cross the Gari River in Sant'Angelo Theodorici, but it is better known now as the Rapido River. You'll see, if you Google the Rapido River, you will find numerous books about this battle. It's a very infamous battle, and it's considered one of the biggest failures of the Allies in World War II. So he was sent there, and lots of controversy about General Clark and actually making them do this because, and they initially, after the war, they insisted on an investigation to try to remove him from the military, which was unsuccessful. But anyway, they plucked him down into this unit and they were trying to cross this river. So they were taking all of these inflatable boats and putting them across this river. Now the river is not that big, but it's very swift, and it was January, so it was super cold. So they were putting these boats up and trying to get this stuff across the river. And in the meantime, it kept getting shot out from under them. Eventually, a lot of them made it across the river, only to find out that the Germans were completely entrenched on the other side of the banks. And 1,330 American soldiers were killed and 770 were captured and taken into custody as POWs. My grandfather was literally there from the time he landed in Naples to the time that he was surrendered by his commanding officer, 2 days, and never fired a single shot. He went from there to well, this is the telegram that my grandmother got. She got 2 of these, one stating that he was missing in action, and they regretted to inform her of that. But one saying he was missing in action, and then another one like this saying that he was discovered to be a POW. This was the first thing that he was allowed to send home. So on this, you can see that what they do is they have 2 options. They can say I'm a prisoner, or they can say I'm slightly wounded, and then you cross out the one that doesn't apply. So he was allowed to send this home. And my grandmother, on all of his correspondence, she wrote the date that she received it. So you can see he didn't get notice until April 1944 from him. I think she got the letter from the telegram previously. But my grandfather sent numerous letters home, and all of them have the dates that he sent them. And then on all of them, she wrote the date she received them. So it's kind of funny. You can read it either the way they were sent or the way they were received. It's kind of interesting. So he went from there to a Stalag in Germany and was there for a few days before he was sent to a potato farm to work this potato farm. While he was there, there were only about 15 of them total for whatever reason. There was a Russian family, or Polish family, there were some Russians there, there were a couple other Americans, but not a lot of them. And he doesn't know why anybody else was there besides himself. He doesn't know why he was sent to this farm in the first place. But they worked on this farm every single day for 14 months. That's how long he was there. He had potatoes for 3 meals a day, every single day for 14 months. The only other thing that they ate while they were there he received Red Cross packages from the Red Cross. So, and most generally intact. A lot of things, things would be missing, because the guards would go through them first. But for the most part, he says that they received them intact. And they had cigarettes, chocolate, beef jerky, I think crackers, and things like that. So he said basically for those, but for those Red Cross packages, they would have been even more malnourished than they were. So when you asked him, though, about his treatment there, he would always say the same thing. He would always say he was so lucky that he was where he was, that he was put somewhere where he was fed. And he would always say, I'm so glad that I was a POW in Germany instead of Japan. He always goes, those boys in Japan had it really rough. And he would never said anything bad about his treatment. In fact, there was a guard where he was that was a high school teacher. And he would commiserate with the inmates about the fact that he was forced to leave a job that he loved so he could be a guard in the military that he wanted no part of. He was also an amateur magician that would perform tricks for them and stuff, which was really cool. So, okay, so not to get off on a tangent there, but while he was a POW, the rest of the division went to they fought in San Pietro alla Fine, and when they got there, it was already bombed out. And I already explained the situation in Italy at the time. Well, and when the Americans got there, all these people started coming out of these caves and in the side of the mountain, and all this rubble, all these Italian refugees were hiding for months and starving to death in these caves. So when the Americans came through, they were so grateful that they were all in tears and hugging the American soldiers. And of course, the Americans had no idea that they were even there. So it was kind of like, hearing the stories about that is hilarious because they were so startled, when all these people started coming out of the caves and whatnot. But the Italians were extremely grateful. After San Pietro, they went to, they fought in Monte Cassino. This is the Rapido River, and up top here is the Abbey of Monte Cassino. There's a lot of controversy here because the Allies did this to the Abbey. We bombed it believing that there were Germans that had that were living there and were using that as a base. The Italians to this day, some of them swear up and down that there were never Germans there. Some of them say, in the surrounding villages like San Pietro say there were. So it's hard to say. It's been rebuilt now, and I've been there. This is a picture from when we were there. It is absolutely stunning. So if you're ever able to go to that part of Italy, the Abbey of Monte Cassino is unreal. So they kept on and then eventually went to, made it to Rome. They had several battles in between there and made it to Rome. In the meantime, my grandfather was met by several other hundreds of Americans. They showed up, picked him up, and they went on a walk for several days. Did not know where they were going. They're absolutely terrified, had no idea what was going on, where they were being taken. After several days, they woke up one morning and realized they were all by themselves. The Germans were gone. What they had done is they had walked them to Allied territory and then fled. So they were within a few hours picked up by passing by envoys that picked them up and took them to where they were transported eventually back to the United States. So he was in debriefing for a couple days and then sent home Oh, this is also San Pietro. I got my pictures mixed up. This is San Pietro after it was bombed. This is where the refugees were coming out of. Okay, so this is him after he got sent home on leave. So after he was liberated, he went home for 2 weeks and was had 2 weeks to report back before he was going to be transported to the Pacific Theater to continue fighting. So you can see how huge his uniform is on him, because that was what he had when he came back. So this is him at home on his 2-week leave before he went back to report in to go to the Pacific Theater. He was on his way to the Pacific Theater when the war ended. So so the way I got this information was not how you would think. So the way I grew up, we were told always that we were never to ask questions. We knew he was in the war, but we were not allowed to ask questions about it, not my dad or any of his siblings. And so I was brought up the same way. I was just always told I wasn't allowed to ask. And the older I got, the more ridiculous that seemed to me. And I had a different relationship with him than they did, because he was a strict parent. He was not a strict grandparent. So one day we were talking and I'm like, well, why not? So I asked him when he was in the military. And he said, oh, just during the war. And I asked him, oh, well, where were you stationed during the war? Okay, and this is where I'm going to try not to cry. So he did not skip a beat. And for 3 hours, he told me absolutely everything that happened from the time he was drafted until the time it was over. He had never told anyone any of that before. So that was huge for me. My dad had died by that time. So I was given this, I was trusted with this information that he'd never shared before. So after it was over, I did my best to remember everything he said and tried to write it down, because I thought that door was closed. I thought that was my one shot and that was all I was ever going to find out. But later on, he had asked me if I would go to a reunion with him. He found out that there was a reunion and wanted me to go with him. He wanted to start going. So of course, I said yes. And now you have to remember, he was only in the 36th Division for 2 days. He literally knew no one. On top of that, he was a POW. So there was some shame there and some fear of, how he was going to be treated. But we went, and I think I started going I think the first one I went to was the 55th reunion. And we had up until 71. It was the most amazing experience of my life. These people that I met, I've heard all of their stories. I have helped them in their wheelchairs. I've helped, feed them. I've taken down as many stories as I could. I've bought their books. I've, all the things. But one of the things that I always found was interesting, that I'd always asked them, how they moved on, how they got over it. And pretty much without exception, all of them said they were so grateful to be alive. They were so grateful that they were spared after all the things that they saw and all the people that they loved that they saw die. And that the hell that they had been through was over, and it was time to move on, go home, get a job, start your family. And the best way to do that was to put it behind you and never talk about it again. Not just one of them, all of them told me the same thing. That's how they dealt with it. They never talked about it again, except for when they would come to these reunions. So like I said, I started coming at the 55th reunion. That was when my grandfather was healthy enough and okay enough to talk about it. up until the very last reunion we had, there were still people coming that it was their very first reunion because it was just now that point in their life where they were comfortable with being able to talk about it. So we did reunions forever and ever, and it was fantastic. Most of them were in Texas. Most everybody was from Texas. There were, I did walk in on conversations sometimes where they were still, even at that time, would have things to say about POWs occasionally, but the way it turned out, like in this picture is one of the last pictures, and more than half of these are POWs. For whatever reason, the POWs seem to be the last ones to be coming. But we also went back to Italy. So we made 2 trips back to Italy, and that's not it. These are it. So when we went back to Italy, they shut down, and when I mean shut down, I'm not exaggerating, they shut down the town. They let the kids out of school. They had processions. They treated them like celebrities. So when we went back the last time, it was my grandfather, another POW, and somebody who stayed in the military and retired as a colonel. They couldn't have been more different at all. But they all had some of the same experiences. And this is one of the processions. This is, you can't see behind this, but it's nothing but kids in the entire town with American flags. 80, 90-year-old men would come out of their houses crying, wanting to thank them and shake their hands and hug them. That was one town. This is another town. This is them. This is Jack. He's retired. And this is Ray. He was the retired colonel. Jack was a POW also. I'm sorry. This is at San Pietro, right above the Rapido River. So this fence looks down upon the Rapido, which my grandmother said when we were there, well, I don't get it. It doesn't look like much to me, because that's kind of the person she was. And my grandfather was like, well, it was enough that we got washed away. So this was another ceremony at a completely different place where they were treated like celebrities. And trying to find, anyway, they were given numerous awards at every place we went. They had done all these awards for them. And the kids there, they know more about history than most American adults. It was actually amazing. Even the children would come up and in tears and thank them because somebody in their family had told them, what they had gone through. My takeaway from this is that they had such a joy for life. And so my takeaway was always to be grateful, to learn and know your history. And by all means, if you see a World War II vet that has a World War II hat on or a World War II shirt on, talk to them about it and ask them their experiences, because they want to tell you and they want to talk about it, and they're running out of time. This is a documentary that was filmed partly from our last trip back, and it's specifically about the 36th Division and those battles that I told about. So if you're interested in this, I think you can get it on Amazon. It's pretty cool. I have a cameo in it. Anyway, I think that's all I have, and I probably talked for 30 minutes, and I apologize, and I tried to run through it. So that's all. You can come back. Nikki.
I was waiting for you to unshare your screen, Sarah.
Oh, you have to tell me to do that.
No, I just wanted to make sure that you didn't have anything else to say. And I was also just reflecting on what you were saying. First off, thank you for sharing. Because that's what we do in community moments, right? And I also just wanted to ask, so you were talking about how like these folks just didn't want to share because they were told, or pretty much that was the cultural thing at the time, is to just keep it in. So what would your advice be besides just talking to veterans? What advice do you have for people who are veterans who haven't talked about their experiences yet?
Honestly, I have talked to a lot of veterans. My ex-husband was a veteran that was in combat, and it's so different. My ex-husband would not talk about his situation, but he was so enamored with the World War II vets that when we went to reunions, he didn't even want them to know that he was a veteran because he felt inferior compared to what they've done. It's this whole weird hierarchy of who didn't do enough or whatever. It's very strange to me, but the differences are so much. Vietnam veterans were in a heightened state constantly. World War II veterans, they were in battle for shorter amounts of time. The enemy was very clear who was the enemy and who wasn't. It was just a different situation. And, I don't know what the answer. I'm sure that trauma came up later in some other ways, manifested in some other ways. I don't know what those were. I didn't see that with my grandfather. I mean, he was very cold father, and maybe that was part of it, but that could have been from a multitude of other different reasons. But none of them regretted the way they handled it, and they all felt like that they did it the right way. They also would often say how lucky they were that they did not have contact with their family, and they don't understand how the current soldiers can deal with that because they completely shut off what was going on at home because they had no control over it and only dealt with the present. And they think it is absolutely insane that people now in the military can talk to their family all the time, in certain things. And they think that would be incredibly difficult. So I don't really know. I don't know if it was just a different kind of experience. I mean, it's partly all of that, generational and so on.
Well, thank you so much for sharing part of your life and then also part of your grandfather's life with us, because I think these stories are really important. And now that we have less and less World War II vets, somebody has to continue passing on their stories. So I am appreciative that you were able to pass on his story to us today. And yeah, just thank you. And if you were in a breakout room with Sarah, she might be willing to share some more with you here in a moment. So before we head into our breakout rooms, if you would like to be a community moment and share something from your life or your family's life or a hobby or anything like that you want your community members to know, please contact Mark Dixon. He will get you set up for a community moment, and we would love to hear from you. And now, probably some folks' favorite part of the day, we are going to go into our breakout rooms, which would be normally our coffee breaks if we were in person. So think of this as a PG chat roulette. You get put in a room with who you get put in a room with. And I will see you all back here in 10 minutes. Make some new friends, catch up with old friends, and enjoy. I'll see you soon. I'm on mute, so let me try this again. Welcome back. I hope you all had a good breakout room, got to chat with some old friends, maybe make some new friends. And without further ado, without embarrassing myself more, I'm going to turn the floor back over to our musician, Ezgi, and we're just going to keep plugging along. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Sure. Now I will play the movement of Saraband. It's a Spanish dance, and back in was written in, you know, Baroque area, actually. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Hopefully you can see it still. Everybody was giving you a silent round of applause again, getting some fun little heart emojis over in the chat as well. So thank you so much. We will hear from you again at the end of our program, and that was just beautiful. So thank you so much, and we will see you soon.
Thanks.
So without further ado, I would like to introduce our featured speaker for today. If I can find him and get him also pinned up here. I hear you, but I'm still trying to find your picture so I can get you pinned so it's not just my talking head. So while I'm trying to do that, get that figured out, I was very not on the ball this morning and forgot to wish you all a happy belated May Day, which was yesterday. And if you're not sure what May Day is about, May Day is not only the start of summer for some folks, but it also represents the International Labor Movement Day, which our featured speaker will be touching a little bit on this morning. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to, can I say Dr. Kim Scipes?
Yeah.
Does that sound correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, I will turn it over to you to give a little introduction on yourself and then tell us what you're talking about today. So I will shut up and let you do what you need to do.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, and good morning. Glad to be here. Let me just, I'm a global labor scholar. I teach for Purdue University Northwest in Indiana. And I just want to, let me focus, rather than tell you all about me, let me just lay out some stuff because our time is limited and I want to use it as much as possible. So one of the things that's going on in the world is that most Americans don't know this, but there's a escalating number of serious uprisings and protests that have been taking place around the world since about 1986. And then once we even learn about them, how do we understand them? So today I'm going to try to put this in a global and historical context, starting with the labor movement in the US, building off May Day. Thank you for that little blurb there, Nikki. And then I'm going to show a few thoughts before I begin, so you have some idea how I approach this. So first of all, I'm not going to do it in a linear style, where I'm going A, B, C, D. I sort of go around, do what I call going around the bush. It's also a bottom-up perspective, which differs from how we've been taught American history or global history. In American history, we get taught about the presidents. There's Washington and Adams and Madison, or Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, blah blah blah. Maybe Lincoln. Then maybe FDR, that kind of stuff. And I don't think that's a very good way to look at it. I follow the teachings of Howard Zinn, another World War II veteran, who recognizes the important things of what are people doing on the bottom of society. So I'm coming from that perspective, a bottom-up perspective rather than a top-down perspective. So this might seem a little strange to some of you, perhaps, maybe not. Also, I'm going to be speaking with really broad brushes. So if we have a few minutes for Q&A and you want to ask questions, I'll be glad to go into this. So let me go ahead and begin. So May Day was yesterday. May Day developed out of the struggle for the 8-hour day. There were something like 750,000 workers that went on strike in May Day, May 1st, 1886. The biggest one was in Chicago. A worker got killed outside the McCormick Reaper Works. There was a protest. Cops came to break it up, even though it was peaceful. Somebody, and nobody knows who it was, threw a grenade, killed a bunch of cops. And they took 4 of the leaders of the labor movement and hung them, even though a couple of them were out of town at the time. So, but the idea of this is the genesis of International Workers' Day. And International Workers' Day is celebrated almost everywhere in the world except for the United States and Canada. In fact, in Chicago, although there's a memorial to May Day, there are no signs to it, on the freeway telling tourists go see the May Day thing, and yet people come from around the world to present plaques. I mean, there's plaques from the Philippines, there's plaques from Colombia, from Germany, I believe from Turkey. There's a whole bunch of plaques. Workers would travel from around the world to bolt on a plaque on the symbol. And yet those in Chicago like kids in schools are never told about this. Okay. You know, the labor movement kind of went through ups and downs up till the CIO years. And then the CIO emerged roughly 1933 to 1955. Right after World War II, we had the largest strike wave in US history. 116 million production days were lost due to striking within the first year after World War II. And this basically was where we get the rise of the working middle class, and that has affected all of us. But after about 1973, certainly by 1980, the labor movement has fallen apart. And so any idea that workers were going to create a new society has I think gone out the window. It's not, I don't see it happening, and the labor movement's in terrible shape. And I say that as a labor union person myself. I'm a trade unionist. So nothing, you know, so not much is happening there, but what happened is around the world, people are in upsurge and in rebellion. So starting from about 1986 with the People's Power Rebellion in the Philippines, some of you might remember that there were uprisings in South Korea, Burma, Tibet, Taiwan, China around the Tiananmen Square uprising, Bangladesh, Nepal, Thailand, and Indonesia. And we generally don't know anything about that. And then it shifts to Eastern Europe. So the countries repudiating the communist control, and then the Soviet Union itself. We also have, then this also spreads to South Africa. We have the liberation of South Africa. We have the Battle of Seattle, where people disrupted the meetings of the World Trade Organizations. In between, we have the pink tide in Latin America, where a number of progressive countries voted in new people like Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, for example, but also in Bolivia and other places. Along with that, we have, starting in 2011, we have the upsurge in Tunisia, leading to what was called the Arab Spring. And this rebellion also went to Egypt, Libya, Syria, as well as Greece, Italy, Spain, and the UK. In early 2011, there was an uprising in Madison, Wisconsin. We had several demonstrations with people, over 100,000 people in a town of 220,000. It was a pretty amazing thing. A bunch of us occupied the state capitol, and no, we didn't tear it up or anything like that. And then coming after that, we see the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. We see the Occupy Wall Street movement that was in 900 countries around the world, around the country, and about 1,500 around the world. And then, you know, last year we had the largest demonstrations ever in the country. About 26 million people protested the death of George Floyd. A tremendous uprising. So one of the things that we see, including the US, is there's a lot of upsurge from below. We're not told about much of this. When we're told, it's not explained very well. What's going on? Nobody knows. Of course, the news media is not making these connections together, but they're keeping things separate. They're not trying to show us their patterns or anything like this. And by the way, I forgot to mention, there's something like 20 million farmers in India who've been out in the streets this year. Tremendous upsurge. So we've never really been told a whole lot about this, but it's there. And the question is, well, how do we understand this, or what's going on a little more basically? Let's start with there. And I think what I want to do real time, I'm just going to take a little bit of time, but I want to make a point that I think is important. And that is, we've heard a lot in the news media over the last 20 years about globalization. Basically, this has been projected as a totally good thing. Corporations are going around the world and they're able to bring us goods at cheap prices, maybe some foods, some exotic foods, things like that, maybe new clothing, such as women's dresses, for example, things like this. And this is said to be this really good thing. but it's something that we can't really affect because it's sort of like a big giant wave in the ocean just breaking over all of us. And so we can't do anything as our jobs are taken away from in the United States and shipped overseas and all this. And it's very confusing when you look at it that way. And I'm going to suggest to you that there's a better way to understand what's going on. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go to my share screen. I'm going to go and I'm going to try to give a diagram, which might make this a little more understandable to you all. So let's see if I can do this. Okay, and now why am I getting that? I don't know. Because I want my white screen. Let me go back and try to find this. Excuse me. Oh, come on. Oh, you live by the sword, you die by the sword, I guess it is, huh? I don't know why. I don't know why I'm not getting the page that I want. Let me try this. Let me go back. Nope. Oh God. Oh, let's see if we can get this again. I want to. No, that's mine. I'm not trying to do this. I want my. Let me stop my share screen and try it again. I apologize. This is supposed to be simple, and it's. Oh, here we go. Here's a whiteboard. That's what I was looking for. Okay, so on the whiteboard, what we've been taught is globalization. Okay, and this has basically been seen as a unilateral force just going out around the world. So it's affecting people, affecting everybody, affecting people around the world. And that's what we're told is happening. And there's nothing we can do about it, etc. I'm going to suggest there's a different way to look at it. And it's this way. So here we're going to start, again, we're going to have globalization. But instead of being just a singular process, I'm going to argue it's a dual process so that we have globalization from above. And I'll explain all this stuff in a minute. Let me concentrate on getting this out from above. So this is a top-down process. And we can really call it a corporatist, militaristic viewpoint. Okay, but I'm going to argue, and this is something that never gets talked about in the media, but that there's their second part. And this type is globalization from below. So this is a bottom up process, and it's built on a movement for social and economic justice. Okay, so what I'm wanting to share with you all is this globalization from below process. This is the process of ordinary people wanting to build a world, a global world, one where we work together, that we treat people with respect, that and based on the values of solidarity and equality. And what I'm suggesting to you is these protests, these demonstrations, these things, both around the world and the United States, is looking at developing this globalization from below process. Now, this is never mentioned in the media. At best, they might show pictures of a riot because they love showing burning cars or something like that. But they never get into, they never report what people are saying, why they're out in the streets, what are they doing, what kind of world do they want. They also don't show that people are wanting to link up with others around the world. So, for example, in my work as a global labor scholar, and I'm gonna stop sharing this. In my work as a global labor scholar, what I've made 9 trips out to the Philippines so far, And what I've seen is these people are trying to build unions, they're trying to build organizations from the bottom up. Most people don't even know there's a labor movement in the Philippines. I would argue it's the most developed and dynamic labor movement in the world. And that they have a conscious program to build global labor solidarity that's been in effect since 1984. Every year, they invite workers and labor leaders from around the world to come to the Philippines for a 10-day program, not just to get a dog and pony show, but you come to Manila and then they send you out to the provinces where you can really see what's going on. You stay with Filipino workers. You certainly visit lots of picket lines and talk to people about their lives and what's going on. And this is an example of people from the bottom up who are trying to stitch together these global networks, these global things that, these global connections. Now, I've also seen this in South Africa. I was in South Africa way back in 2006, traveled some in the country, but met with labor leaders from all around the country. Again, trying to build, trying to put together this global movement from below, this global movement for social and economic justice. And so what I'm trying to suggest to you is that we've got stuff that's happening in the world that nobody knows about, okay? Now, and this is not a new development. I mean, I've been working in this area for 38 years, trying to understand what's going on in places in the Philippines. Now, you see this in labor movements in Brazil, perhaps, but there's also a network called SIGTUR. It stands for Southern Initiative on Globalization and Trade Union Rights. This combines labor movements in South Africa, Australia, India, the Philippines, South Korea, Brazil, and Argentina. So you're seeing a global labor movement from the bottom up emerge, and yet most Americans don't even know about that. Now, I also want to bring to your attention one of the things that might be of great interest to folks, and I taught a course on this just this semester. I taught a course on global health. And one of the books that we read is one I highly recommend. It's on Cuban healthcare. And it's out by Monthly Review Press. It's by a man from St. Louis, Don Fitz, who's an old friend of mine. But what's really amazing, and you see this presented, what I'm telling you about the labor movement is also going on in healthcare. And one of the things, I mean, I know Cuba's just the epitome of evil because that's what we've been taught for the last 50, 60, 70 years. I can't even keep track. But two of the things the Cubans have done has been excellent. One, they've created an incredible education system. And two, they have an incredible medical system. So not only building medical care in Cuba for the people, but sending Cuban medical teams around the world. They've sent hundreds of thousands of doctors all over the world. When there's natural disasters, they're some of the first to arrive. When Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in 2005, Cuba offered to send medical teams to New Orleans, but President Bush wouldn't let them do that. I guess it's better to let people die than have the Cubans help them. But this book is a detailed thing about this. And one of the amazing things that the Cubans are doing is they're providing free medical training for people from around the world, including, by the way, Americans. So you can go, if you're accepted into the program, you can go to Cuba for 6 years and get free medical training, as long as you agree when you go back to your home country that you serve medically underserved people. So here's another example of where people are trying to recreate a healthcare system that serves people from the bottom up. This is in conjunction with the labor movement. There's many more things. Obviously, there's a feminist movement. You have some political movements like anarchist movements that are working. But there's a whole world out there that most of us have no idea is even existing, much less interacting. And it's trying to find ways to bring ordinary people together and to build a world not based on death and destruction, not based on corporate investment that's backed by military power, whether that of the US or particular countries, but it's trying to take care of people. And I think part of this also we need to keep in mind for the US, because I don't know if you realize this, but we spend over $750 billion a year on our war machine. I'm a US veteran myself. I was in there in Vietnam, fortunately did not get sent over. But one of the things that we're doing, we're spending more money every year to kill people, to build war machines, build weapons and stuff like that. And that's money that can't go into education. It can't go into healthcare. It can't go into mitigating climate change. It can't go into improving life for ordinary Americans. And I say this even now, I listened to President Biden's State of the Union speech the other night. I was very much impressed with his domestic policy. But if you look at his foreign policy, it's the same thing, the US trying to dominate the world. And I think that what we need to do as Americans is to consider the possibility that maybe there's different ways to relate to other people in the world. Maybe we shouldn't be out trying to dominate the world, but maybe we should do things like cooperate. I mean, this is a weird idea, I know, but to cooperate and build solidarity to help people have a better lives, to have better health care, to have labor movements that we can learn from and we should learn from in this country. But I just wanted this a short thing. You've gotten a real quick deal because I'm aware of the time. But I just want to let you know that this is out there, and that if you understand that you have this globalization process is actually a dual process with people from the bottom up engaged in it, and not just this top-down singular process that we get out of the media all the time, I think it might give you a better idea of some of the most exciting things going on around the world. So with that, I say thank you. And if anybody wants a quick question or two, we can do that, I guess. But thank you for listening.
Well, first off, can we just give Kim a round of applause, please? Because that was most excellent. If you know me on Facebook or know me in real life, you know that I am a big proponent of, how do I say this without being on camera saying this? I'm a big proponent of socialism and working together. So this was very exciting for me today because I'm in a teachers union. I have worked for places who are not very pro worker rights. So yeah, that's how I'm going to put it today. So I guess I'm going to ask the first question because I'm curious your thoughts on this. And if it doesn't make sense what I'm trying to get to, let me know.
Okay.
As in regards to the global workers movement, how do you feel about Amazon? And let me make that a little less vague. Because Amazon is such a juggernaut of a company, and there's Jeff Bezos, who is whatever he is, what would you say? First off, what is your opinion on the situation that is evolving with Amazon and their workers' rights, or Walmart for that matter? And how can we support the workers and getting them unionized? Yes, that's what I'm going to ask.
Okay. Well, real quickly, I mean, first of all the large corporations are scumbags, and if they don't have unions, they're doing everything they can to prevent that. That also being said, though, it's got to be the workers themselves that decide this is worth it. And part of the problem that we have for the demise of our labor movement is I'm critical of our own labor movement. And coming out of the 1940s, see, a lot of people think that the CIO was a unified labor movement. In reality, it wasn't. There was unions that were from the bottom up, but there were also unions from the top down. And this is what my PhD thesis is about, and I'm trying to get it published as we speak. But what happened was after World War II, the anti-communism within the labor movement got 750,000 to 1 million workers thrown out of the labor movement. They threw 11 unions out of the labor movement, and that really disemboweled the U.S. labor movement. So that what we have is a very myopic type of labor movement, and I think it needs serious reform, and it's not going to happen from at least the labor leaders. That I'm certain of. I've seen for what they've done for the last 70 years. So to me, workers have to decide, one, that they want to unionize, and two, what kind of unionism. And if it's a top-down unionism, I don't think it's going to succeed. And I think that's what we've been running into. Workers have to create this type of unionism, and I think it has to be tied in with the community and from the bottom up. And until we do that, I don't think there's much chance of success. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from labor movements around the world, but Americans are, in most cases, are just too arrogant to try to learn that. So it's a long answer to a question, but
no, that is perfect, because that leads me to my follow-up, because I mentioned that I am currently a part of a teachers union. They take really good care of us. And me and my coworkers often talk about, hey, like, if you need help, you can actually go to them. But I have also been involved in what I would say not a very successful union, where I think it ties into that of the top down.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be, I forget the name of it, but I worked in a deli, and every year the contracts would get less and less beneficial to the workers and more beneficial to the corporations. So I'm assuming that's what you mean from the top-down perspective when it comes to unions.
Well, I mean, basically it's the labor leadership making the decisions, oftentimes without ever talking to the members. And I don't think that's a good way to run any organization. I think you have to take those people that are affected and let them make the decisions and decide what's good or bad, whether they're willing to, if the case is so bad that they're willing to go on strike, that they make those decisions, not some appointed or elected leader that doesn't work in the workplace. So trying to create this bottom-up type of movement, I think, is essential, but I don't think there are many people that are doing that, and I'm not real confident that we're going to get it together anytime soon. But I've seen the benefit of I mean, like I say, I'm a union member, have been for a long time. I've been 4 different unions. I believe in unions. I believe in workers getting together to take care of themselves and each other. But I also think it's got to be done in conjunction with the community. Unions should not be separate from the community. They're part of the community. And that vision has been largely lost from the American labor movement, I think.
Yeah, I would tend to agree, because even personally talking to people who are in unions or who believe in a living wage, it's still this, but have you earned it? And it seems like that's just a very cultural thing we like to do here in the United States. And I'm getting some comments here. So Megan's saying the best workplaces aren't about happy managers, they are about happy employees.
Yeah. And
also comments of I would rather everybody have a thriving wage, which I also agree with. So I had a few more questions for you that I was thinking of.
Well, do you want to ask if anybody else has questions, or?
Usually they put them in the chat. So, okay. Does anybody else have more questions or more comments that you would like to share with Kim? So I'm not dominating this. Just saying I'm doing a great job.
Okay, fine with it. It just, I wanted.
Yeah, usually folks have questions. So we're getting another comment. My workplace had PTO donations and reduced the wages of everyone 10% over a couple months last year so as to avoid laying people off. This is a Fortune 500 company. So any comments on that?
Well, I mean, it goes back to the basic thing I think that's been true since the time of the pyramids. You know, those in power, whether it's a corporation or it's a state, they're going to exploit the workers as long as the workers let them. When the workers come together and say, we're not going to take this anymore, and that we're going to build coalitions with, you know, not only ourselves and other co-workers, perhaps, that will change. I mean, one of the things, by the way, I published a book on the labor movement in the Philippines in 1996. So it's 25 years old. I just recently got the rights, and I'm about to put them up on my website at Purdue University Northwest so that everybody can read it for free. But you see what the Filipinos have done. I mean, they created, I think, the most, and certainly arguably one of the most dynamic labor movements in the world under a dictator, under conditions much worse than what we face, where getting killed is a real possibility, where if you go on strike, you might be on strike for 2 years. And being on a picket line means that you're subject to getting shot up at any time. So they've taken great deals of risk, but they've now maintained this labor movement for over 40 years under the worst conditions imaginable. I mean, there's things like that we can learn from. So for example, one of the things they've done is created what they call alliances of unions in a particular district or city, something like this, where all the unions get together, even though they may be in different organizations, and they work together to protect each other. I mean, working together among the trade unions in this country is not a highly developed process. That we have a larger vision, that we want a better world. Those are things we don't see. We see, well, get a few cents more an hour. I mean, I'm not knocking it. Certainly everybody needs to be paid more. We're so underpaid in this country. You know, they make a big deal of $15 an hour. Well, that's only $30,000 a year. That's not much money, folks. And we accept this. But until people get together and want to change it, it's not going to change. Jeff Bezos is not going to have a change of heart, or any of these people. And what we have to do is get back to, we have to organize if we want to make those changes. And until people are willing to do that, it ain't going to change, in my opinion. So I'm hoping that, you know, one of the things that like I said, we saw this year, we saw 26 million people come out in support of Black Lives Matter. That was an incredible mobilization, but it was here and then it largely gone. We've got to learn to organize. And by the way, a book I would highly recommend is Jane McAlevy's book, No Shortcuts. It's a guide to, she directs it mainly for union organization, but it's true for community organizations as well. And we're trying to develop this in Northwest Indiana as we speak. So there's ways to do things. There are things to learn. There are ways to think about these. If we want to change things, it's not just a matter of electing a progressive official. I mean, that helps. We need them, but we also need an ongoing organization, in my opinion, to keep them honest and to keep pushing them, because they're subject to pressures from the other side, even the best, even Bernie Sanders. So, you know, if we don't organize and support these progressive officials, if we don't go beyond them, if we don't push them, it's not going to change, in my opinion. So there's a lot of things we can do, but I think at the bottom of it, you know, we have to organize in ways that we're not doing and we haven't done for a long time. And that's the challenge. Can we get Americans to do it? Because we've got issues not only around working, but what about climate change? That's the big one, you know. So these are just some thoughts off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, excellent. And I have one more question for you before we head out. Well, before we get more music, I should say.
Yeah.
So Rob says, I agree with the positions you're taking here, but I guess my question is, why are the things you're advocating for not happening, and what can be done to get these labor movements going with actual political power behind them? And you kind of just spoke to this, but I just wanted to throw this question out there in case there was a little bit more.
Well, part of the thing is, I mean, I think there's a celebration of workers, and in some ways, I think too much is expected of them alone. I think most people see them as separate, and they can take care of. They'll solve our problems. I think those days are past. We could have done that had the CIO not been torn apart back in the late 40s. That happened. We've gone for 70 years since then. It's not coming back. I think what we have to do is form organizations in our communities and get together with neighbors and friends and folks, find ways. I mean, just like Oasis has come together, it seems to create some sort of a community. Are there projects that you guys might do, or things such as this around anything? I mean, it doesn't have to be limited to the workplace. In fact, I think a lot of times it's better to start outside the workplace, because there is so much domination inside most of the workplaces. But if you can build community organizations and be a place that workers can come and get help and support, there may be ways to go back and organize some of those workplaces as well. But I think people in the community have to build that organization first, the way it looks to me.
Well, thank you so much. Sorry, I was processing that because this is definitely something. I mean, I advocate for this in my classroom with my kids, teaching my high schoolers how to advocate for themselves and why it's important to work together, not only just in your little small cohort, but as a collective group with people that you may not feel like you connect with or are part of that group. So I know I personally have a lot to reflect on today. And I just want to ask everybody one more time, can we give Kim a round of applause for talking to us today and hopefully inspiring some folks to get involved and support workers that aren't just ourselves, right? So thank you so much, Kim. If you are willing to, and you want people to contact you and ask you questions, you are more than welcome to drop your contact in the chat. No pressure though, but thank you so much. And yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'll put my email on here. If anybody wants, I can give you. I've got. I've published a lot. I've now published 4 books and something over 240 articles. Some peer-reviewed, some in community journals, things like that. If you want a link to my website, let me know and I'll give it to you, because everything's listed, but some of it's even connected back to the original article. So there's a lot of stuff to think about if you're interested. So feel free to contact me and I'll be glad to share with what I've got.
And definitely post your website in the chat as well, because I know I'm interested, and it's better. Sometimes it's nicer to just post it, and instead of folks having to come to you one by one and be like, hey, here's 1,000 emails. Can you give us all the same information?
Right. Okay. I'm going to put my email in there, and while we're hearing this beautiful music, I've got to get the link for my publications page, and I'll put that in chat as well.
Awesome.
So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to invite our musician back one more time. And before you play, if there is any other information you would like to tell us about yourself, or if you have any concerts coming up, or anything new, let us know, and I'm going to stop talking and let you do your thing.
Okay, thank you. So you can check out my music academy. It's soundwaveacademykc.com. Other than that, so I will be traveling this summer and I'm going back to Turkey just to visit my family in a couple of weeks actually. Before that, I will have a performance with Ensemble Iberica. We are gonna play some flamenco music. And we will have a dancer too. So I'm excited for that. It's gonna be on May 14th and it will be at Corvino. Other than that, I will have live performances also with the Turkish music when I come back. It's gonna be like August and September. You can also check out Ensemble Iberica's website. And yeah, thank you so much. So now I will be playing Jig, the last movement of the suite number 1. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Well, before we head out today, as usual, I am contractually obligated to tell you that Kansas City Oasis is a 501c3. So that means we are volunteer run through and through. If you would like to support us through either a monthly donation or a one-time donation, you can go to kcoasis.org, hit that donate button. Or if you are looking for a little extra bang for your buck, you can schedule a drop off at somebody's house, or maybe even your own house if you're showing yourself some love, by scheduling a You've Been Hearted program for your loved one, yourself, or maybe your secret enemy, by contacting Sarah Miller. And this is a fundraiser that they'll bring signs that say somebody at Oasis loves you and decorate whoever you want. Or Gleeland, okay. You have like 8 different last names, Sarah. So contact Sarah for that fundraising opportunity. And with that, I am Nikki Aktipis. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to all of our presenters here today. That was a wonderful program. And if you would like to stay on after we sign off today, you are more than welcome. Have a chat with some folks. So with that, we will see you next week. Have a good week, everybody.
Take care, folks. Thank you.